All right, Football v Football podcast, Seattle Football Edition. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go over both the Seahawks and the Washington Huskies. Huskies, I haven't been doing recaps. I didn't think the first couple weeks really warranted a recap, but the Apple Cup definitely does. We're going to spend most of the time on the Seahawks here. They are the relevant team. We're going to spend time on the Week 2 recap here. Their win over the New England Patriots in overtime, 23-20. I don't know that everyone thought it would take overtime, but we're going to start with that, and then we're going to talk Huskies. We'll see where it goes from here. It looked a little promising in the beginning. You don't know with college football. There's always a ton of turnover. Seattle football is looking to be pretty interesting this year. But like I said, we're going to start with the Seahawks here, and we're going to start on offense. Geno Smith, the bang average quarterback that nationally not many people want to give respect. To the casual football fan, this has been said over sports talk radio in Seattle recently. Not many people want to give this guy respect and put him in an upper tier. Not many people want to give Seattle respect. We just saw PFT released their latest power rankings and still have the Seattle Seahawks at number 21. Even though they're one of 4 NFC teams that are undefeated, and across the league, I think there's maybe only 8 or 9, but still the Seahawks are at 21. Not giving this team a lot of respect. I realize they haven't been on any big nationally televised games yet. I know they've only played the Broncos and the Patriots, but they certainly warrant more respect. Michael Sean Dugar on the Man-to-Man podcast, just heard him say Geno has not been known to play well in prime time. Of course, we know he had that one game against the Broncos where he played okay in the Russell Wilson game where he was the first time he was a starter and Russell Wilson was coming back. With Denver played okay. The big game they had on prime time against the Eagles wasn't even him, it was Drew Lock. Cowboys game last year, he played pretty well, but then through the game at the end, his games against the 49ers, he's been terrible. So the rest of the nation doesn't know Geno Smith the way we know him. That he's capable of these great games. That he's capable of going 33 for 44, 327 yards and a touchdown, and no picks. 103.1 QB rating. We know he's capable of this. We know he's capable of the opposite of this as well. But in this game, he was really clutch. He clutched up in this game, and in overtime, I think they only ran the ball one time, and he got him in position to kick the game-winning field goal. He seems to be adapting to how bad the offensive line is. We'll talk about the offensive line. The tackles, Charles Cross, left tackle, is elite. His technique is elite. He knows how to stretch his body, and his feet, his footwork is amazing, and just watching him block, he is one of the most highly rated tackles in the league, and proving John Snyder right in drafting him so high. Stone Forsythe on the other side, who is the third string tackle behind Abe Lucas and George Fant, not that bad. Not that bad. I saw him allow maybe 1 or 2 pressures. I don't think he allowed a sack. Connor Williams, he's okay. He's still getting to know the offense as a center. But the guard positions, Laken Tomlinson, seems to be the source of issues. Not giving Geno a full 3 seconds. Bradford, I didn't see much from him. I think he did okay. But it's those guards they're not quite giving him 3 seconds. And when you have your better linemen that are, kind of Swiss cheese, they're not like kind of together, it's going to create long-term issues. But in this game, Gino got past that and got his 2 big receivers involved, and both of them had 100-plus yard games. This is the first time I can remember that happening with the Seahawks for a long time. DK Metcalf, 10 catches, 129 yards and a touchdown, and he sprinted away on that first touchdown. Had a cool celebration. Jackson Smith-Njigba, 12 catches, 117 yards. He's a jitterbug out there. He knows how to get open. And Tyler Lockett is the closer. He did it last game, won them the game. And this game, I think his only 2 catches were in overtime. And they were huge catches. Game-clinching catches. So Tyler Lockett is the closer. Again, guys that are talking about shedding Tyler Lockett and investing more, whatever, in the offensive line. Yes, you need to invest in the offensive line, but not at the expense of Tyler Lockett. Use your first 2 or 3 draft picks on elite offensive linemen in the draft next year. Sign a big free agent, offensive lineman, guards, please. But do not give up Tyler Lockett. I know that says 2 catches for 15 yards. You don't know how big they were if you're just looking at that stat. They were huge. Jake Bobo got a couple catches. Again, same stat line, 2 for 15. Zach Charbonnet went in space. He seems to do okay. But he had 14 carries for 38 yards. He got that touchdown. He has some grit. He's not a fast guy. He's not Ken Walker. He's your short yardage guy. He's bigger. He's your short yardage guy. As a full-time running back, he's not great. And the offensive line doesn't block very well. I mean, if you're trying to trust Connor Williams and Laken Tomlinson to run block for you, it's not really going to work out. So that was the offense. The offense played well. They put up 23 points. They played well enough. I mean, I would have liked to see more touchdowns. It ended up being just 1 passing, 1 rushing. I believe they went for it on 4th and 1 and didn't get it. Zach Charbonnet, that should be you. Maybe that's a blocking thing. But thankfully, they did enough to win this game, and they clutched up in overtime. All right, moving to the Seahawks defense, which coming into this game, this is what I thought. I thought that the defensive backs would completely shut down the Patriots wide receivers. They did that. The wide receivers, I'll read you their stat lines. Jalen Polk, shout out UW, 2 catches, 12 yards. KJ Osborne, 1 catch for 7 yards. That was in overtime. I don't think that happened during the game. And that's it. That's it. 3 catches, 19 yards for the Patriots wide receivers. They were shut down. It just so happens that one of those catches ended up being a touchdown. Unlucky. But one of the bigger stories here was Hunter Henry, 8 catches, 109 yards. If you've been following the Seahawks for a while, you remember during the days of their prime, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, they had big issues covering the tight end. That was their big issue when they were an elite defense. This is an old problem. It seems to be somewhat resurfacing. Kudos to the offensive coordinator of the Patriots. We didn't see that last week because Dulcich, I guess, isn't really that great of a tight end, or it's still week 1. You don't know really the weaknesses, but they saw the weakness. The Patriots offensive coordinator saw the weakness in the Seahawks defense in covering tight ends. That is something the Seahawks are going to have to correct big time. We cannot have that again. The tackling, Not as good this week as it was last week. You saw Julian Love miss some tackles. You saw Tyrell Dotson miss, I think, one, maybe two tackles, even though he came up really big in that 3rd and 1 in overtime to stop Ramondre, to make them punt the ball, to get the ball back and score and win. You saw Byron Murphy miss some tackles. You saw Rayshon Jenkins miss some tackles. You saw Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon whiff on some sack attempts. So you saw more missed tackles this week than you did last week. Last week, it's tough to top that. That was an elite tackling game, it seems, at least from our perspective. I maybe saw 2 missed tackles. You saw Antonio Gibson just run past people. See, what I'm looking at is mostly what you can quantify with a defense is if you get your hands on somebody and they're able to shed that tackle, that's on the defender if you get your hands on him. If you never touch him and he runs right past you, that's a different story. I mean, Antonio Gibson just channeled rookie year Washington Redskins Antonio Gibson. He ran for 96 yards on 11 carries. That is 8.7 yards per carry. He had a heck of a day. And on that 45-yard run, everybody missed tackles. Boye Mafe, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jenkins, Tyrese Knight. I think Dotson also missed it on that. And if it wasn't for Devin Witherspoon, that would have been a touchdown. And it might have been night-night because at that moment, I think the Patriots were up 20-17, and that was a back-breaking run to give up. But there were a good deal of positives for the Seahawks defense in this one. Julian Love ended up playing well. He had a pass defense. Boye Mafe had a sack, had a tackle for loss, 2 QB hits. Leonard Williams continues, I believe, to lead the league in QB hits. He has 9 now. He had 4 in this game. He had 1.5, a sack and a half, and a tackle for loss. That sack that he combined with Byron Murphy, that was a great one. Byron Murphy, also a tackle for loss. Hankins, a TFL. Draymond Jones, a TFL. Derek Hall, all it shows on here is 2 tackles and 1 QB hit. If you look into the advanced metrics that's not on ESPN on the box score here, that guy played well. That guy had, it seemed to me like a ton of pressures and a huge pressure, by the way, when it was tied at the end of regulation and with a minute left in regulation, or maybe 30 seconds, and the Patriots had a chance to march down the field and win the game. Huge QB pressure by Derek Hall. I think that's where he got actually his QB hit. So Derek Hall and Boye Mafe, they seem to be legit edge rushers from what I'm seeing so far. I am fairly confident in them. And then on the interior, Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy is still a rookie, but Leonard Williams and him they're showing up. And occasionally Jonathan Hankins, even though you don't hear his name very often, he's getting it done as well. Jaron Reed, he's getting some tackles. I guess he's not really a guy that goes after the QB, but he gets some tackles. Tyrell Dotson, 8 tackles today. We long for the days of Bobby Wagner where your middle linebacker was getting a ton of tackles. That's not really what happened. He took a slight step back today, but him tackling Ramondre Stevenson, that was a great. And Ramondre had a good game too. Him stopping Ramondre on that 3rd and 1 overtime kind of makes up for whatever happened before. The DBs, again, just shut out the Patriots wide receivers. And they're not great wide receivers, granted. We haven't seen great wide receivers yet, even though I think Cortland Sutton's good. Bo Nix didn't really get him the ball very much. Tariq Woolen, Devin Witherspoon in coverage. You can't really ask for much more. Julian Love, Rayshon Jenkins flying around out there, played well enough. Were sure tackling most of the game. So kudos to them. So overall, I think they played well. Listen, Jacoby Brissett is slippery. That guy is able to move his feet in a really, really sly way to get out of pressure. And they say, Gerard Mayo made a comment that he's the slowest black quarterback ever or in the league or whatever. It doesn't really matter because he is very elusive in the pocket, and he was able to get out of a lot of sacks. So it became clear to me why Jacoby Brissett is still a starter in this league, because he can get it done. He finds the open guy, even though it was Hunter Henry most of the game, and he evades pressure and finds the open guy. So kudos to Jacoby Brissett. Now, as we reflect, we realize we are praising the Seahawks defense, but the quarterbacks that they've played are Bo Nix and Jacoby Brissett. Now, nobody's going to say that those guys are in the top 10, 15, even maybe 20 quarterbacks. So they're not really going to see a test, not even next week, because next week they're getting Skylar Thompson of the Dolphins, now that Tua is out. So quarterback-wise, they're not really going to get tested. Receivers, obviously, if Thompson knows what's good for him, he'll just toss it to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. But listen, for who is ahead of them, in front of them, you allow 20 to the Patriots and you allow 20 to the Broncos. I think there's promise. I think there's promise on this defense. And Mike McDonald is still kind of getting them together. We'll see. There's going to be bigger tests. So overall, happy to be 2-0. There's a lot of teams that fell to teams that were supposed to be worse than them this week. Raiders beating the Ravens. 49ers losing to the Vikings. Rams losing to the Cardinals. Eagles losing to the Falcons. On and on. So every team in the league seems to be good. Maybe not the Panthers at the moment, but they have potential to be good. Even the Giants, I think, are pretty good. Better than people think they are. But Brian Daboll's stupid not to bring in a kicker. Anyway, last section here is special teams. And really, I held my tongue in saying this. I wanted to say it during the defense, but Julian Love, whatever missed tackles he had during the game, more than made up for it on that blocked field goal to keep this game and preserve it to go into overtime. Huge. So Julian Love playing on special teams, they paid him all that money, really paid off. Well done, Julian Love. You kind of saved this game. Jason Myers, 3 for 3 on field goals, 2 for 2 on PATs. I believe he's still perfect on the season. I'm thankful that they played him in the preseason because he was missing some there. So that's how you do it. That's how you shake the cobwebs off. That's why I would have hoped that they would have played Geno in that offensive line more in the preseason to avoid some of the offensive line issues that they had in that first game. Michael Dixon, no issues at all there. D. Williams didn't fumble the ball. That's improvement. And Laviska Shenault, 1 return for 26 yards. So that was the game. Not a lot of national attention, but your Seahawks get it done, 23-20. They move on to face the Miami Dolphins without Tua Tagovailoa, who has just gone on IR. We'll see about Skylar Thompson. They were in complete disarray against the Bills last week. Dolphins fans going crazy, and there are already a lot of crazy Dolphins fans. So the game is in Seattle, I believe. And it's not going to be the test that you once thought it was because they're missing their star quarterback. But we'll see what Skylar Thompson does. It is still going to be a test. Going 3-0 is not easy. So hopefully you get Ken Walker back. Hopefully you get some more continuity there. And Charles Cross teaches Laken Tomlinson how to play offensive line. Hopefully that right side is gelling a little bit. Stone Forsythe and Anthony Bradford. And Connor Williams, hopefully he just continues as part, because you need to be in sync as a 5-man line. So hopefully week by week they will continue to improve. That's what you'll need, because you will be playing better teams than this. Okay, before moving to the next game, I want to give you guys a couple ways to save some money. Give you some promo codes, give you some discount codes. The first is on SeatGeek. If you hadn't heard of SeatGeek yet, they're where you buy event tickets to sporting events like football games, basketball, baseball, tennis, any sport you can think of, you get it at SeatGeek. It's a great intuitive interface that I've personally used. I think it's superior to all of them, not only in presentation, but in price as well. You can save $20 off by using the code FOOTBALLVFOOTBALL at checkout. I'll include it in the description as well. And it's not only sporting events. It's any type of event. It's concerts. It's comedy shows. It's anything. So save $20 by using the code FOOTBALLVFOOTBALL. Not only that, but for apparel, if you like hats, you like shirts, you like bags, Huega House, great brand. They work with Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen, Braxton Berrios, I think Shane Gillis. They're on the come up. So come on up with them. Save 15% at checkout by using the code BALL, B-A-L-L, BALL, at checkout. You save 15%. I think they're pretty reasonably priced already. So you're going to save some money there. Huega House. All right, moving on to the Huskies. Like I said, I didn't do recaps for the first couple games. They're against teams that are, I'm not sure if both Weber State and Eastern Michigan are FCS, but they might as well be. In my mind, they seem to be. But those are the teams that you get out of the way, that you pay money, to help their program, and they're guaranteed wins usually. The Huskies are completely different than last year, obviously. We all know this. Everybody that was significant on the team pretty much left. Kalen DeVore went to Alabama, that red coat. Jabbar Muhammad went to Oregon. That's one move that might make it so that I don't really want to claim him as a former Husky, going to your rival like that. The guys that went to the NFL, of course, Michael Penix, poor guy, stuck behind Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins is going to get a few more weeks after that game-winning drive he had, so Penix isn't going to be able to start, unfortunately. And Roma Dunze, who's also kind of toiling in Chicago with Caleb Williams, who might be a bust. Jalen McMillan playing okay in Tampa. Jalen Polk caught the touchdown in the game we just described. Dylan Johnson went to the NFL. I don't know what he's doing. All the offensive linemen, Rose Garden, had a tough day with the Ravens. All their offensive linemen are gone. The whole offense is gone. Except for Giles Jackson, actually, who we'll talk about. On defense, of course, ZTF is gone. Braylon Trice is gone, and I think he's on season-ending IR. And anybody else that was relevant on the team also gone. There's another pass rusher, I forget his name, but I list these to say that this is a completely different team. You have Elijah Jackson left over, who is not really even significant on the Huskies, in my opinion. The significant cornerback on this team is Thaddeus Dixon. And the other relevant defensive back is Camfab, Fabiku Lannon. But you have a new coach, Jed Fish, who I'll never forget the first time I really became conscious of this guy, aware of this guy, was when Golden Tate was on the Real Hawk Talk show, and he talked about a guy that he hated that was a jerk when he was with the Seahawks. And he said, what's that guy's name? The Fish guy. He had like a fish name. Yeah, Jed Fish, that's him. So that was my first impression of him, was as a jerk, as told by Golden Tate. His MO at Washington was to bring in coaches with pedigree, with NFL pedigree, come here to be a pro. He hires Brendan Carroll as his offensive coordinator, who is the son of Pete Carroll. He hires Steve Belichick to be his defensive coordinator, none other, of course, than Bill Belichick's son. And he brings both Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll to Washington during the offseason, during preseason, and brings them there to help coach up the kids. And so you had a good amount of excitement, even though you lost all your players. Carson Bruner coming back. Maybe there's something there to hold the defense together as a linebacker. So, going to the season, they play Weber State. They allow a couple runs in the first half, but then just kind of blow them out completely. I think it was 34-3. Didn't allow a touchdown. I don't think they allowed that field goal until late in the third quarter. The revelations on this team, mostly on offense. Jonah Coleman, the most exciting player on this team. Great running back. Only, I think, 5'9", 5'10". Exciting. He's the guy that will draw national attention if there is anybody on the team that will. Great player. You bring in Will Rogers, Mississippi State quarterback, the guy that played for Mike Leach, the guy that played in the area, the guy that I think has the most passing yards in SEC history. I think 10,000 passing yards. That's not insignificant. It was a product of how they played the game, obviously. But it's not insignificant. This is his fifth year. He somehow, I suppose because of COVID, was able to redshirt his first year. So you bring in Will Rogers. You have Giles Jackson as a receiver that was the number 4 receiver, becomes the number 1 receiver this year. And what we're seeing is a guy that kind of looks like, it's kind of like John Ross a little bit. Not as fast, but exciting. Makes a lot of Willie Mays type catches over the shoulder. And you got a guy in Denzel Boston who is more of a classic receiver, as Giles Jackson is more of like a speedy guy. Denzel Boston has more of a classic build. And then there's the third receiver. You have Hunter, Jeremiah Hunter, who seems to be okay, has his moments. But those two guys I just mentioned before him are the clear number 1 and 2. Behind Jonah Coleman at running back, you got Adam Muhammad, who's good, a little bit of a bigger back. He looks good. And you're bringing back Cam Davis, who we'll talk about more in a little bit. At tight end, you got Devin DeGraff, who I think has 2 catches for 2 touchdowns. What did he do today? He had 1 more catch. So he has 3 catches, but 2 of them were touchdowns. And this catch was 1 catch for 21 yards in the Apple Cup. And you have Latu as well, Kaliki Latu at tight end. And those are the main guys on your offense. The offensive line seems to be okay. I don't think that they really given up many sacks, although I'm seeing here 6 carries for minus 11 yards. I'll have to see if they record sack. Okay, so they in the Apple Cup, they allowed 2 sacks, but in the first 2 games, I didn't see them allow sacks. So, Weber State, Jonah Coleman really is the one that shines in that game. They crush him. Eastern Michigan, a little sloppy in the first half, actually a lot sloppy. You allow them to block a punt. You allow them to stop you, I think, on 4th down. And the first quarter was terrible against Eastern Michigan. They came out completely flat. And then Eastern Michigan, I believe, go for it on 4th and goal and don't get it. They didn't take the points there. They probably should have. They have a good field goal kicker, Jesus Gomez. He got all 9 of their points, including like a 50-plus yarder. So that game ended 30-9, and again, you saw in that game Will Rogers as a very capable quarterback. Behind him, you got a guy named Damon Williams, who seems to be pretty exciting. He's like athletic. He's a runner. He can pass the ball as well, even though he hasn't passed it very much. As you can see here in the Apple Cup, 3 for 4 for 12 yards. He hasn't been unleashed. You're going to go with Will Rogers. It's his 5th year in college football. He played in the SEC. He has records there. Of course, you're going to go with him. Is he spectacular? No, he's not spectacular. But I think he is. His connection, especially with Giles Jackson, is great. So, again, Eastern Michigan, you don't allow a touchdown there. It's 30-9. So you got 2 games without allowing a touchdown. One thing that really bothered me is that the AP refused to put them in the rankings. And they put teams with 1 loss ahead of Washington. They had no respect for them at all. As a lot of times you give blue bloods in college sports respect. Washington hasn't earned that respect yet. They were, I think, 33rd and 30th maybe. In the coaches poll, they had respect. I think they get up to 22nd. But in the AP, if they were taking care of business, not allowing a single touchdown, you got to put them in there ahead of teams with 1 loss, especially, I mean, Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois, and you keep them in the ranking. Oregon barely beating Boise State, and you keep them 9th. You keep them in the top 10. They don't have respect for Washington. And especially after this game, and this brings us to the Apple Cup in September, which is, what the hell is that? The early Apple Cup now that the Pac-12 is, well, I guess it's being rebuilt. And that was a major storyline in this game. This was Washington State's avenue to get back at Washington for being one of the principal parties in dissolving the Pac-12. Now, Washington State and Oregon State seem to have cobbled together the Pac-12 back using guys from the Mountain West and maybe some other conferences. So that'll be interesting to see. Is the Pac-12 back? But this was Wazzou's avenue to get back at the Huskies. And this was a pretty exciting game. This was back and forth. Both of the teams were punching each other in the mouth. It seemed pretty even, which, if I'm looking at it as a Washington fan, I don't want to be even with Washington State. To me, in my mind, they're always a little notch below. They're not a tier below. Tier below would be Weber State and Eastern Michigan. But they always seem to be kind of a notch below. So John Mateer, who Softy was saying he might be a Heisman candidate, I don't know if that's the case. This is his first year as a starter. He looks exciting. I think he runs well. I think he has like this kind of like baseball pass. He kind of reminds me of like a poor man's Johnny Manziel a little bit. Exciting to watch. I think he ran for two touchdowns. Threw for another one to this guy, Josh Meredith, who gave the Washington defensive backs just trouble all day. I think the Washington defense did a pretty good job of stopping the run. I thought the officials in this game, the calls were absolutely slanted towards Washington State. Matter of fact, let me see if there is a team stat here to see the penalties. Yep, 16. They called 16 penalties for 135 yards against the Huskies, only 6 for 45 yards against the Cougs. That seemed to be a big storyline. I mean, to me, just kind of casually. And so that played a role in it. Every time, or many times when a big play was made by Washington, it was called back by a penalty. So to have 10 more penalties called against you, a little fishy. I hate that ref. The way that guy looks, he just looks like a jerk. So Mateer for Wazzou was great for most of the game until the last quarter where he, I believe, threw 2 interceptions. It says only one pick here. Was the other one a fumble maybe? I believe he threw 2 interceptions. Maybe one of them hit the ground. And then I thought it was supposed to be, and then I think there was some karma because their kicker, Janikowski, by the way, the kid of Sebastian Janikowski is the kicker for Wazzou, kicked the field goal, missed it really, really badly. So that was karma for one of the bad calls by the refs. But he pretty much threw 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter and tried to give this game to the Huskies, who Jonah Coleman looked good, but another huge storyline in this game, only 14 carries for Jonah Coleman. And I mentioned I was going to come back to Cam Davis here. If you are going to give somebody Cam Davis's carries, I wish it would have been Jonah Coleman because he does so much more with the ball than Cam Davis. Cam Davis has been on this team. We know he is not a number 1 running back. Jonah Coleman is transcendent. He breaks runs and has speed and has vision. I wish he would have gotten more carries. I wish he would have taken maybe some of Cam Davis's carries, and some of the pass plays would have been run plays. Because he's the best player on your team. He's better than Will Rogers, and he's better than Giles Jackson even. Which brings me to Giles Jackson, who is an amazing player, okay? He is an amazing player. 8 catches, 162 yards, and a touchdown. His connection with Will Rogers is great. It's a great connection. Denzel Boston, 8 catches, 58 yards. And I mentioned some of the other guys earlier. Jeremiah Hunter, 2 catches for 21 yards. Rashid Williams, 1 catch for 8 yards. The tight ends each got a catch or 2, about 20, 30 yards. Damon Williams ran 3 times for 22 yards. He had 12 yards passing. He just kind of needs to show that he can, pass the ball so the defense always doesn't line up in a run defense against them. But it was blow for blow in this game. It was an exciting game, and in the fourth quarter, you really thought the Huskies were going to win this because they gave you several shots. Wazzou tried to give this game away. They were up 24-19 at the start of the fourth quarter, and They were trying to give this game away. And the loss squarely falls on Jedfish in this game. Not Brendan Carroll, who's the OC, because they showed a video of Brendan Carroll even being surprised when Jedfish drew up the play that on 4th and goal on the 1 yard line, you run a, what is that called? Like a little option toss where you have the quarterback roll right, and then either he runs himself or you got another option to pass it back to your running back. And now the guy on KJR, not Hugh Millen, he showed that when the formation, when the Huskies coaches saw the formation of 5 guys defending 4 guys, 5 guys for Wazzou, 4 guys for the Huskies, you should have called a timeout. If you don't have a timeout, take a penalty, because it's 4th down. That's the game. But running along that right side, you were outnumbered. So to continue to persist and be stubborn and run that play anyway lost you the game. So Jedfish lost us this game. And initially, in the post-game press conference, he said, I was wrong. That was the wrong play. The next day, he came out and said, well, it would have worked, but it wasn't executed correctly. It wasn't executed correctly. So were there supposed to be more blockers on that side? Was that the execution? Or was it supposed to be blocked better? That's what you drew up. They did the best they could. You put them at a disadvantage because you had less people. You had them running to a side where they had less people to block than there were defenders to defend. And predictably, they stopped you. So you lose the Apple Cup. You fall out of the rankings, or any potential you had in the rankings. They're not even like top 40 now. They had no votes for the top 25. And you're just kind of praying Wazzou has an amazing season now. They beat Texas Tech last week, I think by a couple touchdowns at least. They blew up Portland State. Now they beat you. And some of the other wins you feel like need to mean something. Weber State, of course, they're not looking good. Eastern Michigan, I think, looked okay. I think they're 2-1 now, so their only losses against you. But you face Northwestern now, who's just kind of, I think they just lost to Duke. And that's going to be a very pivotal game for you. Where does the defense go from here? Defense, you have Thaddeus Dixon, who seems to be a good player. You got Carson Bruner, who he's been here for a long time, seems to be okay. But that defensive line, even though you got that name in Zach Durfee, I don't think he's that great. I haven't seen much from him. He seems kind of slow. He's kind of like a slow J.J. Watt wannabe. Listen, hope he proves me wrong. But you got another guy, I think 94, I think his name might be Parker. You have Broussard, I think, as well as a linebacker. But the defense does not seem to be exceptional. Hopefully, the defensive backs kind of round in the form. You got Prysock. Of course, you got Dixon, like I said. You got Elijah Jackson, who at least made a big play last year, I remember, in the Texas game. But everybody else seems unexceptional, especially the defensive line as pass rushers. So the pass rush needs to get better. The offense is going to be fun to watch. I just hope that Jedfish and his arrogant play calling don't hold them back. So that'll do it. Seahawks are 2-0. Huskies are 2-1. Seahawks haven't been really tested yet, and they won't be tested in this week, really, unless you're talking about some of the receivers. The Huskies fail their first real test here. I don't know really what I should have expected. This is Wazzou getting their revenge because of what we left them high and dry, went for the Pac-10, left them in the Big Ten, left them in the Pac-12. So this is their revenge game, but we'll see where the Huskies go from here. They got a lot of tough games left. They got to play Michigan. They got to play USC. They got to play Oregon. I hope they just stay competitive. I don't want them to get blown out. I want them to build on the momentum of getting to the national title game. We'll see together. I'll be back with more recaps. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you all for your patience. If you just listened to the Seahawks portion, thank you. I guess it's too late because you probably tuned out already. If you listen to the whole thing and you're a big Seattle football guy like me, I really thank you for that. Go use those discount codes as well. Huega House and SeatGeek. It's going to be another interesting season. Both coaches are new. We'll have new problems. We'll have new excitement. But until next time, this has been the Football v Football podcast. And have a fantastic day, football fans.